There is a prison that has no walls, no guards, no iron bars, no locked gates. Yet millions of people spend their entire lives trapped inside it. Some never even realize it exists. They wake up each morning believing they are free. Free to think. Free to choose. Free to lives. But beneath the surface, invisible chains pull at every decision they make. A harsh word from another person can ruin their day. A criticism can linger in their mind for weeks. A rejection can shake their confidence. A disappointment can consume their thoughts. A fear about tomorrow can steal the joy of today. And so they move through life like leaves carried by the wind. Not because they lack intelligence. Not because they lack strength. But because they have unknowingly surrendered control of their inner world. Marcus Aurelius saw this prison clearly. He saw it in politicians obsessed with reputation. He saw it in soldiers consumed by fear. He saw it in wealthy men enslaved by desire. He saw it in ordinary people tormented by emotions they did not understand. Most importantly, he saw it within himself. Because the Stoics never believed wisdom belonged only to others. The greatest battle was always internal. The enemy was never merely outside. The enemy lived within the mind. And the victory they sought was not domination over kingdoms. It was freedom from unnecessary suffering. This is the secret many spend decades searching for. Emotional freedom does not come from controlling the world. It comes from no longer allowing the world to control you. Imagine standing beside a river. The water flows endlessly. Leaves drift upon the surface. Branches pass by. Reflections appear and disappear. Now imagine trying to stop the river. Trying to control every movement of the water. Trying to prevent every leaf from floating downstream. The effort would be exhausting. Impossible. Yet this is precisely how many people live. They attempt to control what others think. Control the future. Control outcomes. Control circumstances. Control the past. Control uncertainty. Control life itself. And because life refuses to obey, frustration follows. Anxiety follows. Anger follows. Fear follows. Peace becomes impossible. The Stoics recognized a simple truth that transformed everything. Some things belong to us. Some things do not. Our choices belong to us. Our judgments belong to us. Our actions belong to us. Our character belongs to us. Everything else exists beyond our complete control. The weather, the economy, aging, other people, fortune, loss, praise, blame, death. Once this distinction becomes clear, emotional freedom begins to emerge. Because most suffering is born from confusion. We attempt to control what cannot be controlled, and neglect what can. The result is a life spent fighting reality. Reality always wins. Not because reality is cruel. Because reality simply is. The ocean does not negotiate with the waves. The sky does not negotiate with storms. Nature follows its course. Human beings suffer when they demand that reality become something different than what it is. A person says this should not have happened, yet it happened. People should understand me, yet they do not. Life should be fair, yet often it is not. The future should be certain, yet uncertainty remains. And so the battle continues. A battle not against life itself, but against the refusal to accept life. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to acceptance. Not passive resignation. Not weakness. Not surrender. Acceptance. The willingness to see reality clearly before deciding how to respond. This distinction is profound, because acceptance is often misunderstood. Many believe accepting reality means approving of it. It does not. Acceptance simply means acknowledging what already exists. A storm arrives. Acceptance says the storm is here. Fear says the storm should not exist. Anger says the storm is unfair. Wisdom says the storm exists. Now decide how to navigate it. Emotional freedom begins with this clarity. Not when circumstances improve. Not when problems disappear. But when perception becomes aligned with reality. Most emotional suffering is amplified by resistance. The event occurs once. The mind relives it 1,000 times. The criticism is spoken once. The memory repeats it endlessly. The loss happens once. Resistance transforms it into ongoing pain. Seneca observed that people often suffer more in imagination than in reality. Centuries have passed since he wrote those words. Yet they remain astonishingly accurate. How many sleepless nights are spent worrying about futures that never arrive? How many arguments occur entirely inside the mind? How many fears are built from possibilities rather than facts? The human imagination is a remarkable gift. Yet without discipline, it becomes a source of torment. Emotional freedom requires learning how to guide the mind rather than obey it. Because not every thought deserves belief. Not every fear deserves attention. Not every emotion deserves authority. This may sound strange. Modern culture often encourages people to identify completely with their emotions, to treat every feeling as absolute truth. Yet the Stoics understood something different. Emotions contain information. They do not always contain wisdom. Fear may signal danger, or it may signal uncertainty. Anger may reveal injustice, or it may reveal wounded pride. Sadness may reflect loss, or attachment. The wise person examines emotions rather than becoming possessed by them. They observe, reflect, understand, then choose their response. This choice is where freedom lies. Between stimulus and response. Between event and reaction. Between circumstance and judgment. There exists a small space. Invisible, powerful, sacred. Within that space lies the difference between slavery and freedom. The untrained mind reacts automatically. The disciplined mind responds consciously. One is dragged through life. The other walks through life. One is controlled by circumstance. The other remains anchored despite circumstance. And this anchoring becomes increasingly important as the years pass. Because age teaches lessons that youth often ignores. It reveals how little control we truly possess. It shows how quickly fortunes change, how relationships evolve, how bodies age, how plans collapse, how time moves relentlessly forward. The wise eventually stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world. They stop demanding permanence from temporary things. They stop demanding guarantees from life. Instead, they cultivate something deeper, something stronger, something that cannot be taken away by circumstance. An inner stability, a quiet center, a freedom that exists regardless of what happens outside. And perhaps that freedom is the greatest treasure a human being can discover. Because most people spend their lives trying to feel free through external means. More money, more status, more comfort, more admiration, more control. Yet history is filled with powerful people who remained deeply unhappy. Kings who feared betrayal. Generals who feared defeat. Merchants who feared loss. Celebrities who feared judgment. The Stoics understood why. External power cannot create inner freedom. You can possess the world and still be a prisoner of fear, anger, envy, or desire. True freedom is internal. It begins when you stop allowing emotions to rule you like tyrants. This does not mean becoming emotionless. The Stoics were not statues carved from stone. They loved, grieved, felt joy, felt sorrow, felt fear, felt anger. What made them different was not the absence of emotion. It was their relationship with emotion. Most people become swept away by feelings. The Stoic learns to stand beside them, to observe them without drowning in them. Imagine the ocean during a storm. Waves crash violently against the shore. Foam rises. Wind roars. The surface is chaos. But far beneath the surface, the deep ocean remains calm. Still, immense, unshaken. This is the image Marcus Aurelius offers us. The surface of life may become turbulent. Criticism may arrive. Loss may arrive. Uncertainty may arrive. But beneath the surface there can remain a deeper calm. A part of you untouched by the storm. Emotional freedom is the discovery of that depth. And the path to it begins with one difficult realization. Much of our suffering comes not from events, but from attachments. We become attached to outcomes, to expectations, to identities, to people, to plans, to the way we believe life should unfold. Then reality changes course. A relationship ends. A career shifts. A dream collapses. A loved one leaves. And because we were attached to a specific outcome, pain intensifies. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of impermanence. Not to become cold, but to become wise. He understood that everything external is temporary. Health, wealth, fame, relationships, even life itself. To cling to temporary things as though they are permanent is to invite suffering. This does not mean refusing to love. It means loving without illusion, appreciating without possessing, holding life gently rather than desperately. Think of holding water in your hands. If you grip too tightly, it slips through your fingers. If you hold it gently, it remains for a time. Life is like this. The tighter the grips, the greater the suffering when change arrives. The Stoic secret is not detachment from life. It is detachment from the demand that life obey your desires. There is enormous peace in this shift. Because once you stop demanding permanence from temporary things, you stop feeling betrayed by change. Change is no longer an enemy. It becomes part of nature. And nature has always moved through cycles. Day and nights. Summer and winter. Birth and deaths. Growth and decay. Nothing remains fixed. The wise person stops resisting this truth. They move with it. Like a sailor adjusting sails to the wind rather than cursing the wind for blowing. This flexibility creates resilience. A rigid tree snaps in the storm. A flexible tree bends and survives. Many people mistake emotional control for suppression. They believe the Stoics wanted people to bury feelings. But suppression is not freedom. Buried emotions do not disappear. They return in other forms. Bitterness, anxiety, explosive anger, numbness. The Stoic approach is different. Notice the emotion. Understand it. Refuse to let it govern your actions. Marcus Aurelius might feel anger, but he would pause before speaking. He might feel fear, but he would examine whether the fear concerned something within his control. He might feel grief, but he would remember that loss is part of the human condition shared by all. This pause is everything. It is the space where wisdom enters. Most destructive actions happen when that space disappears. A harsh word spoken in anger. A reckless decision made in fear. A relationship damaged by uncontrolled emotion. The untrained mind reacts instantly. The disciplined mind creates distance. Not coldness. Clarity. And clarity changes outcomes. Imagine someone insults you. One response is immediate outrage. Another is quiet observation. This person has spoken words. Those words reveal something about their state of mind. Now I may choose my response. The insult has not vanished, but its power has changed. Because you are no longer surrendering your peace automatically. You are choosing. Choice is the foundation of freedom. Epictetus, who was born a slave, understood this perhaps better than anyone. He taught that while others may control your body or circumstances, they cannot control your mind unless you surrender it. This is one of the most revolutionary ideas in philosophy. Your inner world can remain free even in difficult circumstances. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but genuinely. A person may lose money and remain dignified, lose status and remain calm, lose approval and remain grounded, because their identity is no longer built upon unstable foundations. It is built upon character, virtue, integrity. These things cannot be taken away by fortune. And as the years pass, many wise people naturally begin valuing them more than external success. Youth often chases achievement. Age begins chasing peace. Not because ambition is wrong, because experience reveals what truly satisfies. Their applause fades. Their excitement fades. The novelty fades. But inner peace endures. A clear conscience endures. A disciplined mind endures. A life lived according to one's values endures in a way reputation never can. This is why many older, wiser people become quieter. Not because they have lost passion, because they have lost the need to prove themselves. They no longer argue to win approval, no longer chase every opportunity, no longer react to every criticism. They have discovered something more valuable than victory in debate: peace. And peace requires selectivity. Selectivity with attention, with energy, with emotion, with thought. Not every disturbance deserves entry into your inner world. Not every opinion deserves your concern. Not every fear deserves your belief. The Stoic becomes a guardian of the mind, carefully choosing what is allowed to take root there. Because whatever repeatedly occupies the mind eventually shapes the soul. Feed the mind resentment and bitterness grows. Feed it comparison and envy grows. Feed it fear and anxiety grows. Feed it wisdom, gratitude, discipline, and acceptance, and peace begins to grow instead. This is not abstract philosophy. It is daily practice. Moment by moment, thought by thought, reaction by reaction. The path to emotional freedom is walked in ordinary moments. In traffic, in conversations, in disappointment, in temptation, in criticism, in uncertainty. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice mastery over oneself. And slowly, through repeated practice, something extraordinary begins to happen. The mind becomes less reactive, less fragile, less dependent on circumstances, more steady, more clear, more free, not free from pain. No philosophy can remove the human condition, but free from unnecessary suffering, free from being dragged helplessly by every emotional wave, free from the exhausting need to control the uncontrollable, free from the prison of external validation. This is the Stoic secret. Not that life becomes easy, but that the soul becomes stronger than the storms it faces. And eventually, every sincere seeker of wisdom arrives at a quiet crossroads. Not a crossroads visible on any map, not marked by signs or monuments. A crossroads within. One path leads toward endless resistance, the other toward acceptance. One path continues the exhausting effort to control life. The other embraces the reality that life was never meant to be controlled, only lived. Many people spend decades fighting what already exists. They fight aging. They fight change. They fight uncertainty. They fight the passage of time. They fight other people's opinions. They fight reality itself. And because reality is undefeated, they become tired. Not physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. A weariness settles into their lives. A constant tension, a subtle frustration, as though they are swimming against a current that never ends. The Stoics offered another possibility. Stop fighting the river. Learn to move with it. This does not mean becoming passive. It means understanding the difference between cooperation and resistance. The sailor does not control the sea, yet he reaches distant shores. The farmer does not control the weather, yet crops still grow. The wise person does not control life, yet peace still becomes possible. Because peace emerges when reality is accepted rather than opposed. This lesson often arrives through solitude. There is a reason so many wise people grow comfortable being alone. Not because they dislike humanity. Not because they become indifferent. But because solitude teaches truths that noise conceals. When distractions disappear, something remarkable happens. You begin meeting yourself. Not the version presented to the world. Not the identity built from reputation. Not the mask worn for approval. The real self. The one beneath all performance. This encounter can be uncomfortable. Many people avoid silence because silence reveals what constant activity hides. Unresolved fears. Hidden insecurities. Unexamined beliefs. Lingering attachments. The noise of the world acts like a curtain. Solitude removes it. Marcus Aurelius frequently retreated inward even while surrounded by the demands of an empire. He understood that the greatest sanctuary was not a palace, not a temple, not a distant mountain. It was the disciplined mind itself. There is a profound freedom in learning to enjoy your own company. Because a person who is comfortable alone cannot easily be manipulated by loneliness. A person who enjoys silence does not desperately seek distraction. A person who understands themselves becomes less dependent upon their opinions of others. This independence creates emotional strength. Not arrogance. Not isolation. Strength. The strength to remain calm when approval disappears. The strength to remain centered when criticism arrives. The strength to remain whole even when circumstances change. And circumstances always change. This is one of life's most reliable truths. Nothing remains fixed. Children become adults. Adults become elders. Strength becomes frailty. Beginnings become endings. What was once new becomes old. What was once distant becomes near. The years teach this lesson repeatedly. Yet many resist it until the very end. They cling to old versions of themselves. Old expectations. Old identities. Old dreams. Meanwhile, life continues moving forward. The Stoics saw wisdom in adapting rather than clinging. Nature itself provides the example. Leaves do not resist autumn. The sun does not resist evening. The seasons do not argue with change. Only human beings insist that permanence should exist where nature has promised none. And perhaps nowhere is this lesson clearer than in mortality. Few subjects make people more uncomfortable. Yet few subjects have more power to transform a life. Most people live as though death belongs only to others. A distant event. A future concern. Something abstract. Something avoidable. But mortality quietly accompanies every human being from the moment of birth. Not as an enemy stalking us. As a teacher walking beside us. Marcus Aurelius returned again and again to this truth. Not because he was obsessed with death. Because he understood its value. The awareness of mortality strips away illusion. It reveals what matters. Imagine discovering that your time is limited. Not theoretically. Truly understanding it. Would you spend so much energy worrying about criticism? Would you remain trapped in old resentments? Would you continue postponing what matters most? Would you waste years seeking approval from people who barely think about you? Probably not. Mortality has a way of clarifying priorities. It separates the essential from the trivial, the meaningful from the meaningless, the permanent from the temporary. Many people fear thinking about death because they believe it will make life darker. Yet often the opposite occurs. When mortality is accepted, life becomes more vivid, more precious, more beautiful. The ordinary moment becomes extraordinary. A conversation with a loved one. A sunrise. A quiet mornings. A shared laugh. A walk beneath the sky. These things stop feeling ordinary. Because they are no longer assumed to be endless. The finite nature of life gives value to life. A song is beautiful partly because it ends. A season is cherished because it passes. Human life is no different. The Stoic does not deny sadness. The Stoic simply refuses to let fear of endings prevent appreciation of beginnings. And this perspective creates a remarkable form of emotional freedom. The freedom to love without possessing, to appreciate without clinging, to enjoy without demanding permanence, to participate fully in life while accepting its temporary nature. This is not detachment from life. It is intimacy with life. A deeper relationship with reality exactly as it is. Most suffering emerges when we demand guarantees. We want certainty where certainty does not exist. Permanence where permanence does not exist. Control where control does not exist. But life offers participation, not guarantees. Experience, not certainty. Moments, not permanence. Once this truth is accepted, the burden begins to lift. Not all at once. Gradually, like heavy armor finally being removed after years of carrying it. The mind becomes lighter. The heart becomes softer. The spirit becomes calmer. You stop trying to hold the entire world together. You stop demanding that reality conform to your preferences. You begin trusting yourself instead. Trusting your ability to meet whatever arrives. And that trust changes everything. Because emotional freedom is not confidence that nothing bad will happen. It is confidence that you can face what happens. It is not certainty about the future. It is faith in your capacity to respond. It is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear become your master. This was the strength Marcus Aurelius cultivated. Not strength over others. Strength over himself. Not power over circumstances. Power over his judgments. Not control of fate. Control of character. And that is why his wisdom still speaks across centuries. Because human nature has not changed. People still fear uncertainty. Still seek approval. Still struggle with attachment. Still battle anxiety. Still chase happiness in external places. And still overlook the freedom available within. The freedom that emerges when the mind stops resisting reality. The freedom that emerges when character becomes more important than reputation. The freedom that emerges when acceptance replaces fear. The freedom that emerges when the soul learns to stand firmly within itself. Like a mountain beneath shifting clouds. Like a lighthouse standing against the sea. Like the deep ocean beneath the storm. Calm, steady, unmoved. And in that stillness, something profound begins to reveal itself. A truth so simple that many overlook it. A truth hidden beneath ambition, beneath fear, beneath desire, beneath years of distraction. The truth that emotional freedom was never something you needed to acquire. It was something you needed to uncover. Most people spend their lives searching for freedom as though it exists somewhere beyond the horizon. In another city, another relationship, another achievement, another chapter of life. They tell themselves that peace will arrive later. That freedom belongs to some future version of themselves. The version that is wealthier, more successful, more admired, more secure. But the horizon keeps moving. The destination keeps retreating. The search never ends. Because the prison was never outside. And neither was the key. The Stoics understood this with remarkable clarity. The mind creates much of the suffering it later tries to escape. It builds fears from possibilities. It builds resentment from memories. It builds anxiety from uncertainty. It builds identity from approval. Then spends years struggling beneath the weight of its own constructions. Emotional freedom begins when those constructions are questioned. Not every thought is true. Not every fear is prophetic. Not every desire deserves pursuit. Not every judgment deserves trust. The disciplined mind learns to examine itself. To step back. To observe. To ask, is this belief helping me? Is this fear necessary? Is this reaction wise? This habit of reflection transforms a person. Because awareness weakens the power of unconscious patterns. The moment you see a chain clearly, it begins to lose its grip. The moment you recognize attachment, You are no longer entirely controlled by it. The moment you observe anger rather than becoming anger, a space appears. And within that space lies freedom. This freedom is not dramatic. It rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, in small moments. The moment you choose calm instead of outrage. The moment you choose understanding instead of resentment. The moment you release an argument that no longer matters. The moment you stop needing everyone to agree with you. The moment you accept what cannot be changed. The moment you return your attention to what can. These moments seem insignificant. Yet they gradually reshape an entire life. A river carves stone not through force, but through consistency. Character develops in the same way. Day after day. Choice after choice. The Stoic does not become free through a single revelation. Freedom is cultivated. Patiently, deliberately, through practice. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself. Not because he lacked wisdom. Because a wisdom must be renewed. Again and again. The human mind naturally drifts. Toward fear. Toward distraction. Toward vanity. Toward worries. Toward desire. The Stoic path is the continual return. The continual return to reason. To perspective. To acceptance. To virtue. To reality. Over time, something extraordinary begins to happen. Life still presents challenges. But challenges no longer feel like personal attacks. Criticism still appears. But criticism no longer defines identity. Loss still occurs. But loss no longer destroys the soul. The world remains uncertain. Yet uncertainty no longer feels unbearable. Because stability has moved inward. No longer dependent upon circumstances. No longer dependent upon outcomes. No longer dependent upon approval. The center of gravity shifts. And when that shift occurs, a person becomes remarkably difficult to disturb. Not because they have become cold, because they have become rooted. Like an ancient tree, storms may shake its branches, winds may bend its limbs, seasons may change around it, yet its roots remain deep, strong, steady, grounded. This is emotional freedom, not escaping life, standing firmly within it. The Stoics never sought withdrawal from existence. They sought participation without slavery, to love without possession, to work without obsession, to lead without arrogance, to lose without despair, to age without bitterness, to die without terror. This balance represents one of humanity's highest achievements. And perhaps it becomes even more valuable with age. Because age reveals what truly matters. The years gradually strip away illusions. The illusion that approval brings lasting happiness. The illusion that control brings lasting security. The illusion that success guarantees peace. The illusion that more is always better. Eventually, experience teaches what philosophy merely suggests. The most valuable things in life are internal. Wisdom, integrity, gratitude, courage, compassion, presence. No market can sell them. No thief can steal them. No critic can diminish them. No circumstance can completely destroy them. These qualities become a sanctuary, a refuge that travels with you wherever you go. And perhaps this is why many wise people appear calmer as they grow older. Not because life became easier. Often it became harder. They experienced loss, disappointment, failure, grief, uncertainty. Yet somewhere along the journey they learned an essential lesson. Peace does not come from controlling life. Peace comes from learning how to meet life exactly as it is. Without illusion, without resistance, without unnecessary fear. There is immense dignity in such a life. A dignity independent of achievement, independent of recognition, independent of status. A quiet dignity rooted in character. The kind Marcus Aurelius carried while governing an empire. The kind Epictetus carried while living as a former slave. The kind Seneca carried amid political turmoil and uncertainty. Different lives, different circumstances, the same inner principle. Master yourself. Accept reality. Live according to virtue. Everything else is secondary. As this realization deepens, another transformation occurs. You stop viewing life as something happening to you and begin seeing it as something unfolding through you. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice courage. Every uncertainty becomes an opportunity to practice trust. Every loss becomes an opportunity to practice acceptance. Every criticism becomes an opportunity to practice perspective. The external event remains the same. The internal relationship changes. And that relationship changes everything. Because emotional freedom is not found in the absence of obstacles. It is found in the way obstacles are understood. Marcus Aurelius once compared obstacles to fuel. What blocks the path becomes the path. What challenges the soul becomes the training ground of the soul. The obstacle becomes the teacher. The difficulty becomes the opportunity. The hardship becomes the forge. This perspective does not eliminate pain, but it transforms pain into growth, transforms adversity into wisdom, transforms suffering into understanding. And perhaps this is the deepest Stoic secret of all. Life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be lived. Fully, courageously, consciously. The desire for total control is what creates so much anxiety. Yet control is largely an illusion. The future remains uncertain. Other people remain unpredictable. Circumstances continue changing. Time continues moving. The Stoic accepts this, and in acceptance finds freedom. Not resignation. Freedom. The freedom that comes from no longer demanding certainty from an uncertain world. The freedom that comes from no longer demanding permanence from temporary things. The freedom that comes from trusting your own ability to respond, rather than trying to predict everything that might happen. And when this trust becomes strong enough, fear begins to loosen its grip. Not disappear entirely, but loosen. The mind becomes quieter. The heart becomes steadier. The spirit becomes lighter. Life begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a journey. Not because circumstances improved, because perception matured, because a wisdom deepened, because reality was finally embraced rather than resisted. And in the end, emotional freedom may simply be this to wake each day without needing the world to behave a certain way before you allow yourself peace. To accept uncertainty without surrendering courage. To accept change without surrendering gratitude. To accept mortality without surrendering wonder. To accept difficulty without surrendering dignity. To stand firmly within yourself while the world continues its endless movement around you. Calm amid noise. Steady amid change. Present amid uncertainty. Free amid circumstances. And when that freedom is discovered, something beautiful happens. You stop chasing peace. You become peace. And wherever life leads you afterward, that peace walks beside you.